Going back to development just for a second, one thing that Frank Coons has emphasized a lot um, is that the development in Springfield, especially using Legacy Point as an example, that the focus on the far,
Sprawl.
the sprawl type development has really sucked all of the energy and all of the interest away from areas like MacArthur Boulevard and Dirksen Parkway and the others that have suffered in the recession. As mayor, would you agree with that? Do you think that Springfield has neglected its more established areas in favor of the newer developments? And if you do agree with that, how do you address it as mayor? How do you reverse that?
I think that one of the first things you have to deal with is the marketplace, and is there a demand? And if we look at the Shield store, apparently someone is making a major investment
Right.
based on the fact that they feel there is a demand for that. And when we look at that particular investment, what we're talking about is construction jobs during the construction. We're talking about added property tax that goes primarily to the school district, because approximately 65% of the property tax bill goes to the school
Is that
district.
186 or do you know?
That would probably be Ball Chatham.
Yeah,
It's still going to a school
Yeah.
district. Approximately 13% of that will come to the city of Springfield. You're going to have sales tax, which is going to come to the city of Springfield. You are going to have jobs that are created in the city of Springfield. So that as we take a look at the development of that particular piece of property, I mean, there's some real benefits to that for the community overall. And I don't think that you're going to say that you don't want to have that in Springfield. As we talk in terms of development, particularly retail development, generally speaking, what happens is we have so much retail. And what you don't want to do is to have incentives for someone to develop something where they're just shifting dollars from one area to another. And I will use an example if I could. And when we look at the area that was developed for the Meyer store. Now, before the Meyer store, my wife shopped at Schnucks. The Meyer store is now more convenient, so she shops at Meyer's. There's no additional sales tax revenue or anything being generated as a result of that. It's a shift. Yet the city of Springfield entered into a deal to reimburse the developer for the infrastructure on that project. Is it really necessary to do that for that type of project?
Do you think
I
they
mean,
would've built
I
it
think
anyway?
I think you really, when you start talking about providing incentives, you really have to look at what you are getting. Now, when we look at the Shield store, what we're talking about is having a business service district where they are adding a tax that is on top of what is collected, and that money is going to be used for the infrastructure there. They are paying something over and above to shop there. It's not like you're giving them something back that the city would be getting.
So what kind of businesses would you target as opposed to retail? Or what kind of enterprise?
I'm not sure that when you talk in terms of retail activities that you really need to be providing incentives to retail type of activity, unless there are something that's unique about that is going to be bringing business to Springfield. In terms of the Shield store, the way they've done it in terms of adding a 1% onto the sales tax, they're willing to do that. The people who are going to be shopping there are going to be paying for it. The city is not giving them the benefit that they would normally be receiving. But anytime you're putting something into the city, there's a certain cost of providing your police protection and other services, and you don't want to give away the benefit that you're receiving.
Do you think Meyer would have gone out there without those city incentives?
Yes.
As far as, if I could just follow up on this, as far as the east side goes, how do you I mean, as mayor, do you go and you talk to these developers and try to sell them on the east side, or there's a lot of abstract thought about, yes, we need to go do something out there, but I don't think there's any concrete plan anywhere. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had a guy named Mike Sidolnik, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He had this kind of crazy plan.
It wasn't crazy.
Well, I mean, it required a lot from a lot of different branches of government, is what I recall. And I thought it would be very difficult to actually do that. But, to provide all of these tax incentives to get people to go over there. I mean, is that something that you look at, or what specifically can you do to get people to go over there?
I think that if you look at East Springfield, one of the things you have to keep in mind is the only way you're going to have development there is to provide incentives.
Okay.
People are not going to go in there and do major development without having incentives. And I think that when you talk about Mike Solodonic, the concept that he had was probably a good concept. The problem is he wanted to do something from Hope to South Grand sort of at one time, and in all honesty, the dollars aren't available to be able to do something like that. If you break that up and you start out around Pope Street and start working square blocks at a time, doing both sides of South Grand, and you work back, moving west, I think that is an increment that is doable. One of the things that you need to do in order to be able to spur private investment into that area is to have the infrastructure in place. No one is going to invest money in that area without the city having the proper infrastructure in terms of the streets, the sewers, the curbs, the sidewalks. But I think that if you start doing that, that is how you really start looking at East Springfield and actually showing some progress and working that area. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, and it is going to take some very attractive incentives to get that started. But once you get it started, then I think it will progress. I think that what has been done with Madison Park Place, in terms that replaced the old John Hay homes, is something that really changed the face of that neighborhood, and you were able to get people to go over there. There were incentives for people to do that. You're going to have incentives for people to look at East Springfield, to be able to put that type of residential housing back there. But we have to do something. You can't just let it continue to fall apart the way it is today.
Those incentives would need to include retail, wouldn't they, in that territory?
I think that as you talk in terms of that area, particularly from Polk to South Grand, as you get down closer to South Grand, you would have a retail commercial type area. But I think most of that area has traditionally been retail. I mean, you've got areas, I'm somewhat familiar with it. My father carried mail there for an awful lot of years. That was his mail trip from about 15th Street going east out to Pope, and he covered the area that was a couple of blocks south and a couple of blocks north of that for a long period of time.
Didn't you say that one thing you grew up in John Hay homes?
My first home in Springfield was the John Hay homes.
Because you don't talk about that a lot, do you?
No.
Okay, how come?
I mean, I've used it in commercials before.
Okay, well, I guess you did that. I haven't seen all your commercials. It's been a while.
Yeah.
That was probably before you were around.
Oh, I was just a pantograph.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
May I? Workforce diversity. You've spoken, I believe I'm right, about taking steps in, what is it, the fire department?
Police and fire department.
Police department. I'm wondering about your own administrative team. Are you going to work very hard to make your team look like Springfield? In terms
We will.
of gender and race?
We would look to have a team of people that would be reflective of the community, yes.
That's a nice verb, would love to, but I'm going to push you a little bit on it.
Go right ahead.
How about a commitment?
I mentioned Bill Logan a few moments ago. I've not had conversations with Bill about this. Bill worked for me
Yeah.
for the 8 years that I was in city government before. I would like to have him in city government again. Bill is retired. Now, I can approach people. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are willing to join in administration. But my intent would be to have a workforce that is reflective of our population, and that involves both race and gender.
Okay.
And your intent still is to only serve as mayor for one term?
For one term.
I have a question about that. I mean, does that limit you politically? I mean, does it almost make you a lame duck from when you walk in the door? And if the alderman, and I've watched this up close. I mean, you're going to get politics going on in that council room sometime. I mean, aren't they going to kind of view you? I mean, if they don't want to do something, can't they just say, well, he's going to be gone in 4 years? You know, maybe we can be intransigent.
I think that the people who will be elected to the city council are interested in doing good things for the city of Springfield. They want to move the city forward. There's always going to be politics involved in government, but ultimately, good politics is good government. And I think it's more important what we're doing and what we're attempting to do, and being able to convince both the general public first and then the city council second that that's the right thing to do.
Chris Rick keeps doing these cartoons that's an independent Republican, because you're a Republican and you advertise yourself as the independent candidate. And then lots of committeemen started to be informed of your events the day that coffee was dropped.
It was interesting. They were informed of an event, but they forgot to put what day it was.
I did notice that, at least on some of the emails.
So, I mean, if in fact, I had given them the information, I would have told them the day that it was going to happen, because it appeared that it was going to be that day,
Yeah,
which wasn't the case.
Yeah. Anyway, your thought. I mean, people still think somehow. Well, actually, Tony said to me that some of your people let them know when your stuff was. So, was that the right or wrong thing to do for your team, or do you want any? Do you shun all contact with them, or what's your situation?
Well, first of all, we had support from Republicans in the primary. We had support from Democrats. We had support from independents. I'm sure we had support from some people who consider themselves to be part of the Tea Party, Green Party. I mean, we had a broad spectrum of support during the course of the primary, and what you're trying to do is to be as inclusive as possible in terms of bringing everyone in. And I might just add that if you haven't looked at the precinct results from the primary election, there are 126 precincts in the city of Springfield. I won 96 of them. Sheila Stock-Smith won 20. Kuntz won 6. Coffey won 4. If we break it down by wards, I won 7 of the 10 wards. Sheila Stock-Smith won wards 2 and 5. In each of those wards, there's 12 precincts. She beat me by 40 votes or less in those 2 precincts, and I came in those 2 wards, and I came in second. In Kunz's case, he won his ward, and I was 100 votes behind him in terms of Ward 3. So I ran well all over the city of Springfield. It wasn't a matter that I had one geographic area. I mean, we did very, very well in all areas of the city of Springfield, and I think was indicative of what we were trying to do, is to reach all areas of the city of Springfield, because I think we really need to focus on the fact that we are one community.
I know that you ran in 03 and didn't make the top 2 at that time. What has changed between then and now? You're still a longtime banker and a former mayor, and somehow Springfield didn't make you the front runner then. Now you're the current front runner. What's the deal? What happened?
When we looked at the 2003 race, and maybe it's my ego, but I think if I could have cleared the primary, I could have won the general election. You basically ended up with a partisan race in 2003. Tony Libri took approximately 31% of the vote. I think maybe he took 32% of the vote. Davlin took 31, and I took between 25 and 26. They both spent 3 times what I spent in terms of the primary, and we had Don Hickman in the race, who took 11% along with a 5th candidate. So it really was a very partisan type of election. As we have approached this election, I think that we, number one, started much earlier, which was mistake number one in my case in 2003. If you recall, Mayor Becerra didn't announce till November the 15th that she was not going to seek a 3rd term, and everything seemed to be put together as to who the candidate was going to be at that particular time. And I really didn't jump into the race full time until the 15th of January, and I'd been better off when I decided to get in the race if I'd started full time in December. But given the fact that I had a job and I didn't feel I could just walk away and leave people, I wanted to get things set up so that they would not be a problem with my employer at that time.
I would follow up on this. When I hear you talk at the forums and stuff, you mention your various, you've been the head of like a smorgasbord of organizations in the last 8 years. I mean, has this been in your mind a long time? I remember talking to you in 2007, and you had no interest in running against the mayor at that point. I mean, how long have you been thinking about running for this job? I mean, how far does that go back?
I will be totally honest with you. When Tim Davlin was elected mayor, I met with Tim, and I told Tim, I said, anything I can do to help you, I will do, because if you do well, the city's going to do well. And I took that approach during the course of the campaign. In the last couple of years, things have really gone badly, and I just really felt that the city needed a change in leadership, that we really were headed in the wrong direction. I did not see anyone that was going to step forward and present themselves as a credible candidate to take him on.
You said, even as you announced, was it November already?
November 29th. Well, the official announcement was November 29th, and I'd already filed
Right.
My petitions at that point.
You said there were like 40 or 50 people at CWLP sitting around doing nothing. How do you know nothing is? I mean, it'd be really hard to do nothing all day. Number one, and I know at least some of your.
At least some of them are. Some are looking at porn.
Can you say who they are, how you deal with them, and if you don't say, then it's just kind of, you sound like, the other candidates have said similar things since. There's a lot of people doing nothing. We'll do.
Actually, if you take a look at my official announcement, most of them have picked up on using the same things. In fact, at least one of them used the same words.
Yeah. Not a big argument there, but so who are these people, and are you actually going to go in and fire 50 people? And if so, is that a fair way to be campaigning? Or what does that do to those folks, and what does that do to
what I have said, and I said this in response to your question at the announcement on November 28th.
Move on. You remember better than I do, yes.
What I said was we're going to do a personal audit of every position in city government to see what function each position is providing either the city of Springfield or the taxpayers. And those that are not providing service, those positions will be eliminated.
Mike, has there been a discussion, I apologize for coming late today, about the fact that the form of government is very different now from the form that you...
That was the first question we...
Okay, got it. Sorry.
He thinks it'll be easier this way.
I do, in all honesty.
Okay.
Staying on the budget a little bit here.
Bernie, does that answer your question, or?
Well, actually,
I do believe within CWLP that we can eliminate a fairly large number.
Because if you're talking 40 people,
positions.
you're talking what is that like?
I figure $100,000 a person.
Yeah, so
when
like
it's just taking a $60,000 salary along with benefits. Some of those will be more.
So who are all these people? Are they all friends of Todd or friends of Davlin or what?
There are a number of positions within CWLP that I think that we can eliminate, and no one will know that they're gone.
Are they office jobs, or what kind of jobs are you even talking about?
They basically are jobs that are in offices. They're administrative type positions.
So when you talk about doing a personnel audit, who is doing the personnel audit? Do you bring people in to do it? Do you rely on
No,
department
we
heads?
will bring people in to do this.
Okay. The reason I asked that was because Sheila made the point that as they were going through a lot of the budget wrangling the previous year, that she sort of classified it as being sort of a toxic atmosphere where everybody was fighting with everybody to protect jobs and try to keep people from, I guess, being thrown under the bus. And so that's why I asked. So you would definitely rely on somebody outside to come in,
Yeah.
somebody with expertise in running a utility, or somebody
Or
that's in general
someone that
personnel?
has some expertise in terms of dealing with state government, that would have some idea as to what people are doing.
Are you talking about?
I'm not talking about going out and hiring a consultant. to
You're
do
talking about
this.
volunteers locally, right? Like people you know.
That would be correct, except these would be people that would be paid.
Oh, you would pay them
Yes.
like a company locally, or
No, I would be looking at individuals.
So they'd be on my contract. They wouldn't
Right.
actually come in and become
Right.
city
you
employees.
clearly have somebody in mind for this. It
I
sounds like.
I have some people in mind. Yes,
Can you say who? That's not transparent, like the farmer thing.
I haven't talked to them.
Okay.
Well, along those lines, I want to talk a little bit in budget specifics. Frank Edwards has made a big deal. First, it's a 10 million deficit, and then now it's going to be 3 million. What's your assessment of where will the budget be in a year? Will you be facing a $3 million shortfall the way Frank Edwards says? And how?
Actually, Frank said 4.
4, okay. And do you think that's accurate?
It might be minimal.
Now,
I mean, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is they put certain things into the budget that may or may not happen,
okay.
and some of them are some fairly large dollar amounts, like getting $900,000 in state income tax, and that may or may not
Right.
come. I mean, that's a fairly sizable number in and of itself, and I mean there are a number of large dollars factored into that budget, and the $4 million is over and above those
Okay.
numbers.
Now, you mentioned, would now if you're having to come up with savings, would the jobs audit you just talked about, do you think that would be the main source of where you might shore up city finances?
I think that would be a large portion of that, and then it's going to be a matter of going through and setting your priorities.
Okay. And people, when they talk about city budget cuts to the average voter, that means, are you still going to pick up my leaves in the fall, my branches, very basic services? Should Springfield get used to the fact that we're going to have to see less of those, or where might cuts come there?
Again, I think what you have to do is set your priorities in terms of the services that you are going to deliver, and until you're actually into looking at the numbers, it's really hard to be able to give specific answers about that. What we have to be able to do is to match our expenses against existing revenue. And I mean, that's what you have to be able to do. Ultimately, and not within the first 30 days, I would anticipate when we go past the first 30 days, have a budget in place, then we will begin to look at a zero-based budget and build a budget from scratch. That's not something you can do quickly.
Mayor Davlin had made a commitment to something called the Cool Cities Initiative as an advisory group headed by.
It's part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, if I
Right,
recall.
exactly.
Mhm.
It took them a little while to get that
Mhm.
advisory group together, but they're beginning to do some good things, and in the long run, will improve the health of the community as well as a number of other wonderful things. Are you committed to that, continuing that
I wouldn't necessarily be committed if you, and Diane, I know that there's a number of things that are included in that, and there might be 10 things. I think there's one that I may have a problem with, but most of the things that that are included in that I would not have.
What's the one thing?
The code agreement, isn't there something to
Right.
do that you endorse that?
Right.
And that would be the one thing that I would.
Does our power plant not comply or something?
You're just getting into to all kinds of things when you start going into the agreement, and I have no problems conceptually with what you're talking about on the other items. Those are things that we should be doing. I do have a problem with that one item.
And with the other 9 items, you may fulfill that 10th item. I mean, just because
Yeah.
those initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the high-speed rail situation, what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think that will end up? Are we going to end up with 10th Street as the main corridor, and would you favor that approach?
I've actually read the studies that were done by Hansen Engineer, and if you're not familiar with the studies that were done in 1999, what they did was they took the 3rd Street tracks, the 10th Street tracks, and the 19th Street tracks, and they did a comparison of the 3. So the things that they were measuring against, they measured all 3 sets of tracks against. It's not a matter they looked at one and sort of looked at it one way and looked at the 10th another way and the 3rd. They looked at all 3 of them. I mean, that's how they are compared in terms of looking at safety, traffic, all those things. There's no question when you read the 3 of them, the 10th Street track is the preferred corridor. As you think in terms of what we're talking about, the 10th Street track is the most desirable track from a safety perspective and a cost perspective in terms of being able to deal with overpasses, underpasses, and in terms of going through the city. It also, as you look at the 10th Street tracks, you have areas where you can put 5 tracks through there. So in order to do that throughout the entire city, you would have to be able to expand and get additional land. It is by far the preferred option in terms of looking at this. I would tell you the same thing that I made a comment of in a meeting as we were dealing with this before we actually had any agreement to really take a look at the 10th Street track, and that is, I'm not concerned about high-speed rail in Illinois. I'm concerned about what it's going to do in the city of Springfield. And if we can't work out something that is good for the city of Springfield, I have no problems in filing suit against everyone in order to stop the entire project in Illinois.
Are you saying if it gets determined to go on 3rd Street that you would do that?
Yes. And at the time that I brought that up in a meeting, I said that I'm not talking about making a threat. I'm talking about we have to be committed to do it.
Which meeting was this?
This was a meeting before we had the agreement that they were going to take a look at the 10th Street track.
Is this a
Okay,
public
so
meeting
that-
or who was?
No,
or
this
one
was
of-
Was this when
we
you-
were doing weekly meetings.
Who's we?
Well, I was chair of the chamber, and we were actually sort of leading the.
So you were
The
there as
group.
a Chamber of Commerce person?
Yes.
I was
Mhm.
there too.
No,
This was you, like the mayor, the chairman of the county board, etc.
correct.
And now, but there isn't the argument, and again, Frank Coons has made it, and we had a group in here for a meeting with us that Frank Coons called it, that would be the Berlin Wall if you expand 10th Street the way they're talking.
And he said it would tear up the north end. That was the other.
And it would,
And east.
yeah.
And so yeah.
Is that a concern, or is that, what's your reaction to that?
I think that, again, as we take a look at the 10th Street corridor, it is the preferred corridor. It is the one that would have the least impact on the city of Springfield. It is our one opportunity, I think, to instead of having 3 sets of tracks running through the city of Springfield 50 or 100 years from now, to have 1 set of tracks. There is going to be economic opportunity as a result of having the 10th Street corridor. There are going to be recreational opportunities by abandoning the 3rd Street tracks and the 19th Street tracks that the people of the city of Springfield will have the opportunity to use. I think that when you weigh the benefits to the community, it's still something that we should be doing.
It's been my impression all along that.
Now the question is, how do you
Right,
do that?
but it's been my impression that I've never bought the argument that it's going to be the Berlin Wall or the divider or whatever, because it's already there. It's not like we're putting up something new, but it does seem like if you go with 10th Street, then you have more chance at getting access, through type access and that sort of thing.
There's no question about that. I mean, that's why it would be the preferred corridor. And 19th Street is really, if you, again, look at the studies that were done in 1999, I mean, that really is not anything that you would consider looking at. And 3rd Street, the negative impact that would have on the community is, you really, there used to be 2 sets of tracks going down 3rd Street.
Mm-hmm.
They removed that. The standards that you would have for building tracks today are different than when they had 2 sets of tracks there. They're wider. Now, the only way that they could do the tracks on 3rd Street is not to maintain the standards that they have between the tracks, bring them closer together.
It seemed like the whole issue really, that Union Pacific didn't pay too much attention to it until Dick Durbin got involved. If you're mayor, do you think you'll still have him as an ally?
I think that Dick was not well informed about what the situation or the impact was going to be on Springfield when this was initially brought up. I think that he has changed his opinion. I also believe that Union Pacific now looks at some benefits in terms of the 10th Street corridor. The other thing is that when this started, everything was geared that it had to be done very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe part of the reason that it had to be done very quickly is there was some type of an agreement with the mayor of the city of Chicago that we needed high-speed rail for the Olympics when it was going to take place, and therefore they were operating on that timetable, and when the Olympics were no longer a viable option for the city of Chicago, the timetable changed, and that was to the benefit of Springfield. I mean, Senator Durbin is a very powerful senator. He can get a lot done for the state of Illinois and for the city of Springfield, and I think that he will eventually be able to provide the federal funds to run that down 10th Street.
By criticizing his relationship with Sheila Stott Smith, have you soured your potential relationship with him in any way?
I've known Dick for a long time. Maybe part of his support of her is my opposition to running down the 3rd Street tracks.
She said she's for 10th, although the city wouldn't fall in to see if it was on the 3rd, I think she said.
But again, that when we started out, that was pretty much it was going down the 3rd Street tracks, and we had no choice, if you recall.
Before we go on
Yeah,
to the topic,
sure.
Sheila keeps saying, there's going to have to be a match from the city in terms of 3rd Street versus 10th Street. Do you believe that to be also true, and do you have any idea how much that would cost city taxpayers?
Again, there would have to be a match. I don't know that the match would necessarily have to come from the city of Springfield. I would also point out to you that there are dollars that are available right now from the state of Florida, Ohio, and Wisconsin. There is a period of time where the state of Illinois can apply for those dollars. Our understanding is no one is moving forward in terms of the application for those dollars at the present time, and maybe part of the problem is the environmental impact study has not been done. But certainly, we should be looking to go ahead and apply to get a portion of that money to deal with the safety issues that we would have using the 10th Street corridor.
And do you support the Raymond Poe and Brower have a bill that would bar the state from spending any money on 3rd Street. Do you support that bill? I assume you do.
You are correct that I would support that bill. Now, Representative Brower is going to hold that bill till we see what happens. One of the things you also have to keep in mind is that would also stop any maintenance work on the track. So I think while the threat is there, you would probably need to, if you got into that situation, have some refinement in terms of how that would be dealt with.